Okay, so we're back with section 2.2 for module 2, and this section is describe websites and web pages. Again, you might be familiar with a lot of the stuff in here, but just kind of pay attention and see if you can pick up a couple things for the exam. Also, as before, make sure you read the section before watching the video. So anyway, here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at different types of websites, pros and cons of web apps, major components of a web page, and then we'll talk a little about secure and probably should be unsecure, not insecure websites. Okay, so this is just saying there's just a ton of categories of websites. So if you think of, you could think of websites as all websites, or you could, or all the same, but they're all different based on the purpose. So some of them you're going to be very familiar with. E-commerce, if you go to Amazon, social networking ones like Facebook if you're old, or maybe Twitter or Instagram if you're younger. Media sharing site, that's something like YouTube or anything where you might share photos. A web portal, maybe they're customized. So if you go to different places like a banking category, that might be a portal where you're going to get into lots of different pages from different places. Search engine, Google, a wiki, if you go to Wikipedia, wiki is just more of a collaboration thing because lots of people contribute, whereas other websites you can't edit or add to, but wikis you can add to. I would just think of this as there's just lots and lots of different types of websites and lots of different categories. So just kind of keep that in mind. There might be a question or two that say this type of site and put it in one of these categories. So just use your best judgment on that. Okay, web apps. So I mentioned web apps a second ago. I just want to kind of slide over here and look at web apps. So I've actually went from here, I kind of clicked on Office 365 and went out here. So this is all Microsoft Office. And if I click on like Excel, for example, and click on a blank workbook, you can see that I'm running Excel, but it's running inside the browser. So this is not on my desktop here. It's actually running in quote unquote the cloud. That's different than if I went down here and open up this Microsoft Excel, which is a product that's running actually installed on my desktop. So the difference is, where is the software? If the software is up on the web, it's called a web app. If the software is not, it's I think probably referred to as a local app, but it's installed locally. And so when we look at this pros and cons, we're looking at the pros and cons of having a web app. So think about using Excel in a browser versus using Excel on your desktop. So the pro is you can get anywhere. So let's say the Excel is only installed on my desktop here, and I'm someplace else, and I grab any computer. I can't get to Excel, but I can get to Excel anywhere if it's a web app. So the downside is you have to have a web connectivity. So if you're someplace where you can't get an internet connection, you can't get to it. Okay. Pros, I can collaborate with others. I can actually allow you to work on the document. I can work on the document, not necessarily even at the same time. It does manage that, but you and I can share the document. This one here is the problem with that is it's up on the web. So if I could have you do it, but anybody else could get to it too. So it could have some security issues. Store the work anywhere. If you, let's say you do something at home and then you come into class and you forgot to bring it, if it's a web app, you can get to it from the CCBC computers. If not, you're gonna have to go home and get it. Now, if you have some problems, then you can't get it too. So if all of the Microsoft servers or the Google servers go down and they don't route it properly, your document is stuck there and you can't get to it. Save storage, you're not storing it on your computer, so you need a smaller hard drive. This probably, if web app provider goes out of business. Now, this is not for the large ones like Microsoft and Google, but there's some folks, I bought some software and they didn't make it, and so that was useless. And then always have the latest version because they're always updating it, but there's fewer features. So if I go back to here again, this actually looks very similar to Microsoft Excel that on desktop, but there are some limitations. So you can't do everything. So when we get into the projects later with Microsoft Excel and PowerPoint Word, you can do those projects on Office 365, but it's slightly different, and sometimes it doesn't have all of the same functionality. Okay, major components of a web page: header, navigation bar, body, sidebar, footer. This you probably can't see this too well. This just kind of shows you that they're laid out in similar ways, but think about it. and actually they don't all follow this particular setup. I guess they do in general. There's a header and there's a footer and there's a body, that's for sure. There's always some form of navigation. There may or may not be a sidebar. So again, if I go back to Amazon as an example, there's definitely kind of this header piece here. So as I move up, as I go to different websites, this web pages, this kind of generally stays the same. Here's the place where you can search. Here's your kind of account, the information, your shopping cart. Here's some of the basic navigation features here. And then here's everything that's on the website. That's the body. If we go all the way down to the bottom, there's some stuff that's always there too that's kind of a footer, right? Contact and some questions and help and things like that. You know, here's some other information about other millions of Amazon sites. The body tends to be very different. So in this case, it's hard to find a sidebar per se, at least on this particular site. If we go to the Blackboard site here, you can see there's a sidebar over here on the website, and here's the body. So it does follow. Here's the header, kind of the same stuff. Go all the way down to the bottom. It's hard to see on this one, but there's kind of a Blackboard footer, and then there's a sidebar. So it kind of follows that general layout, but the body, you know, given some of the tools nowadays, the body is much different than it used to be. Much more web pages used to look very, 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 very similar, almost like everyone was the same. It's just the actual information changed. But in this case, with some of the tools they have now, we can make this a lot more interesting. Okay, so the last little thing is going to be on encryption. Encryption just means you code it. So if you were a kid and you made up a code where you wrote like the letters, the alphabet, and then put a number. So the number 1 stood for A and the number 2 stood for B, and then did your name in numbers and then sent it to a friend, and then they could code and decode it. That was so that it could be secret. So the web uses something similar, some type of different encryption strategies in order to safeguard that information, like for your credit card information or your social security number or anything. You know, email sometimes encrypted, so the people can't just intercept it and read it. And again, we talked about those protocols. The protocol in the web that deals with security is this HTTPS. So it's Hypertext Transfer Protocol, but secure. So in those cases where you need that level of security, you'll use an HTTPS. And like if I just go to USAA as a bank, USAA is my bank, and I get up there, you'll note up in the, well, let me get to USAA, see if it does. Up in the corner, once you log on, they have this little lock button up here, which indicates that it's a secure site. And if it doesn't show here, but there it goes. But if I click on it, you can also see the HTTPS there, meaning that it's a secure website as well. Digital certificates, they just basically vouch for the authenticity. So if you ever go to a website and the website has a digital certificate, it means someone has verified that that website is actually that website. The kind of a goofy example I use is it's like a letter of introduction. So if you went to a different country and someone gave you a letter and you got to there and said, we show these on movies where people present a letter and they read the letter and they go, oh, okay, you're good. So it's just, or think of it as like a passport, right? So it's just a certificate that said this website is actually who the website says it. Because if you went to a bank and you thought it was a bank, but it really wasn't a bank, and you started giving information about where your money is to that particular site, it could steal all your money. So you want to make sure that you're on a bank website before you start talking about your money and things like that. And of course, it requires sign in with user and password for you can enter sensitive information. So these are all things that are just in place that maybe initially weren't in place to make sure that the bad actors on the internet don't steal anything for you. Okay, so that's it for section 2.2. See you back for the other sections.